This is the June 10th meeting of the Addison Northwest School District Board of Directors. So,
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
are there any changes or edits to the agenda? Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda as written, please say aye. Okay. Is there any public communication tonight? Yes.
Thank you for all your work. I follow you guys on the website. But tonight I have 4 questions I'd like to ask you guys tonight.
I'm sorry, Carol, can you just introduce yourself? and
Oh,
your-
Carol
Thank
Coffman,
you.
Addison. 16 VSA 554 guarantees community members input and board responses. Board policy A21 does not comply with this statute. The board's commitment to transparency should extend an even greater opportunity for community members to express their opinions and receive board responses during any open meeting. Not in emails, as I have experienced in the last decade. I no longer will build my public forum through blind copy emails, which many of you in the years have received them, and I'll use Front Porch Forum. Unified unions have been around for over 40 years, and there is no empirical evidence to support their claims of better education at a lower cost, and that's what we're experiencing right now. At the very least, 16 VSA 554 needs to be a strong component in the board's policy because it guarantees, quote, any person in the school district to appear and express views in regard to any matter considered by the board. Quote, any person can request reasons for school board actions in writing. At this point, Vermont statutes creates a platform of greater transparency than the ANWSD board policy A21 and A22. Title 16 guarantees input and response, even though somewhat restricted. Transparency would take the restrictions off and just apply reasonable rules. So question number 1, will the school board immediately bring A21 public participation at board meetings into compliance with 16 VSA 554? In an email, I received that you had it vetted by the Vermont School Board Association, and my response was, I've had it vetted by the Secretary of State, Jim Condos. And so if we're still at odds, I'm going to challenge you with the Attorney General's office. So that's number 1. Go on.
Do you want me to address that?
Sure.
We have researched this twice in the past. I believe at your urging, Carol, back in February and in the previous November. And I actually have an email here as well from Jim Condos
Okay.
that you were also part of. And you know, he does state that our policies are in compliance with 16 VSA 554. He talks about Public Records Act, and he says, beyond Public Records Act, state education law confirms that school boards must comply with open meeting law and must give reasonable opportunity to any person in the district to appear and express views regarding any matter considered by the board. Additionally, if asked to do so, a school board must give reasons for its action in writing. 16 VSA 554. This comes a bit closer to compelling a response to certain requests for information. But in our reading of the statute, there are limits here as well. A school board must only give reasons in writing for its action, for example, and the statute does not contain any deadline. So I'm not clear on how you're feeling that A21 and A22 are not compliant with that.
Because a community member the right to make a comment on any matter during the agenda. It's at your discretion. And the discretion should come from the law, and that is we have the right to make a comment on any matter.
On actions, on board actions,
What's that?
on board actions, action items.
No, that's not what the law says. I can read it for you.
It says, on any matter considered by the board, which is Jim Condos here is saying is board actions. But I don't want to get into a back and forth. That's the message that I have from Secretary Condos.
Well, we'll have to go for an interpretation because this has been going on for a long time, and his response to me in 2013, which I assume hasn't changed, although the chair may have asked their attorney for an opinion and that he may be within the law, I believe that this could place a burden on the public. For instance, if you can only speak during public comment, how do you know how the board discussion will go before it actually happens? When I was chair of the city council, we always had time at the beginning of the agenda for public comment for items not on the agenda, and then we allowed public comment to speak while discussing the agenda item. And then he goes on, and he ends it with saying, this appears to be an issue that could be challenged with the AG's office or Superior Court as a possible violation of open meeting laws. For instance, okay, so I'll bring Addison as an example. So you guys talk about how you're going to reconfigure everything, and then we're not allowed to give input until you take a vote. That seems to be a huge burden upon the people that want to come and be part of the discussion.
Well, we haven't discussed anything along those lines yet.
Well, I'm just using that as like an extreme example, that a
Okay.
lot of people are going to want input before you take your vote. And I don't,
Absolutely
so we'll
understood.
have to go, and what I'll do is I'll take my complaint and I'll take your policy and I'll send it to Jim Condos and see. Okay.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Number 2, will the school board audio record all ANWSD strategic planning ad hoc committee meetings, implementing your commitment to transparency?
So the Strategic Planning Committee has disbanded. It's done. It's fulfilled its charge. It's done. They won't be meeting anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we disbanded at the last board meeting.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks. And number 3, at the end of 5:30 board retreat minutes, there was an attachment, ANWSD FY20 strategic budget projections, followed by exhaustive line item budget projections. I would like to receive this detailed itemization in a more simplistic form using Schedule 1 of the audits. This will allow me and others to compare budget growth projections with prior audit actuals. I'm looking for trends, a big picture that can be assessed by completed audits in the future. So can they be condensed into something more friendly?
I don't believe a document like that exists, but any document that is existing would be, okay.
The one that I do just comes right out of our software, and then it's
But
in
you're not
Excel.
able to, you're not, because you had to have given him these numbers.
But I don't summarize them in that way. They take the numbers we give them, like what that report is done in, and then they consolidate and put the numbers into that format, how they want to summarize them. So we don't actually do that. The auditing firm does that. So I would have to go through and figure out which numbers went into each of those categories
Right.
in order to figure that out, and that's a lot of time.
Which would give the board and the taxpayers the best accounting that's possible, because this is the actual audit. So if we were to, and you know, you've heard this on email, but if we were to get this when you proposed the budget, so if you were to put it in this form, when you, just like recently you proposed 2020, right? And then when the ANWSD closes their books, then they fill out the same. And then when the auditors fill this out, you have this amazing comparison between proposed, actual, ANWSD, their numbers, and then the auditor's numbers. And you would get a big picture of trends, which I'm working on putting them together right now. But it's amazing when you step back and you get these trends in big numbers instead of having trying to follow them in detail. So that's a no.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
number 4. Quote, hold municipal votes if needed in October, November 2019 is on the timeline found in the ANWSD Board's strategic work plan for 2019-2022. What possible voter questions does this board foresee to having to put that on this year's timeline? Because I wasn't at the meeting.
I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't follow.
So on your timeline for your strategic work plan, you have on October, November 2019, you have, quote, hold municipal votes if needed. So my question is, what possible voter questions does this board foresee in this near future?
Well, I certainly cannot predict the questions that we're going to foresee. But what I can tell you, Carol, is that the focus of this board for the fall, the late summer, moving into the fall and right into the budget session is going to be trying to figure out how to present a budget that's affordable to our communities. And we're going to be having a lot of community engagement surveys and forums to try and find out what the best way is for us to move forward.
Okay.
That is on the timeline, because if there's a situation that comes up that we need to have a vote for, we need to do it in October. That's why it's on the timeline. If we don't have to have a vote, then we don't have to have a vote.
Wait, you see my struggle, because you're not even going to start the talks until the fall, right? And so you have, what, September, October, November, 2 months if you decide to close a school, which is listed on the community action. Addison School is at the top of the list. And I just think that everybody can do a better job if we're going to go that route, which is the route everyone's going to go. But just real detailed community involvement, and also considering all options that are available to the taxpayers. And I don't think you can do that in 2 months. But
Well, we've had community outreach starting at the beginning of this year, and we've collected a lot of ideas. Did you take a look at the Community Engagement Committee's report of all the ideas that were submitted?
right?
Right. So, okay, I think we do need to move on, but thank you very much for your comments. Is there more public communication tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chris Cahart, I just wanted to talk about the proficiency-based grading system. I work in IT. Before we release a new system or software to our users, we need to verify that it works consistently and performs flawlessly in tests. If it changes a user's workflow in any significant way, extensive training of the people responsible for deployment and the users must be done before the system goes live. Stakeholders must sign off that they are ready for the change. By no fault of the administrators and faculty that have been working on Jump Rope, this software is not ready. Grades for classes are split into multiple folders, while other classes have all the grades in one folder. One folder is marked all grades, but it actually only has one grade. There's still no way to determine if an assessment was a 3 out of 4, or whether the maximum allowed grade was a 3, and how that averages into the ones that are out of 4. I can't figure out how a missing assignment is assessed in this new system. I've been communicating with the school on these issues, but it sounds like jump rope is not reacting or not reacting quick enough. Even if it were complete and ready for release, the underlying issues with the way grades are assessed remains an issue with many parents and teachers. There are no longer quarterly grades, only one grade at the end of the year. All grades are cumulative and weighted heavier as the year progresses. With this decaying average, students with the same exact grades but in different order will have a final grade with almost a 20% difference. What if the first time a student is assessed on a standard, they nail it? They get it all 100%. But the next time, they don't because the subject matter is different. The second grade is weighted much more than the first. With this decaying average, is understanding and articulating the underlying reasons for the revolution given the same value, or not given the same value as the Cold War just because they were taught in different parts of the year? Is F. Scott Fitzgerald like not as important as, or more important than Mark Twain, depending on where it comes in the year's teaching? I just think that this isn't ready. I know I've been told that there's a new version of jump rope that they're going to be working on this summer, but we've been testing this all year, and now there's going to be a new version, untested, that's going to roll out at the beginning of the next year. I just don't think we're ready for this. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. I certainly can't answer any of those questions, but I bet that, if you meet with Jay or Stephanie, they could probably shed
We've
some light
been meeting, and
on
these are the concerns that are still out there.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment from the public tonight? Okay. So we have board education tonight, school wellness and behavior supports. These cover a range of our policies with Lynn Rappaport, Nick DeVita, Dylan Stoll, and Brianne Walsh. Thank you.
So we have, hi everybody. Take a big deep breath in. I'm Lynn Rappaport. I'm here with this wonderful crew. We have two things going on tonight. One is just a one-page front and back of wellness policy updates. I'm sorry this didn't make it into the board packet earlier. But if you do have questions, feel free to ask later on in the evening or reach out to Sheila with any questions and we can follow up next meeting. Take one, pass that on. The structure for this report is a little different than last year with the different domains that the wellness policy is based after, the 10 domains, current work that's happening, a 3-year plan, and then the connections to the continuous improvement plan.
Hey everyone, so I'm Nick DeVita. I'm one of the school psychologists here in the district. So we're going to start kind of similar to how we started last year, just an overview of some of the terms that we're going to use. So the first one is SWIS, which is Schoolwide Information System. So it's a web-based data and reporting system that we use throughout the district to track office referrals, majors and minors throughout the district. The Positive Behavior Interventions and Support, so PBIS. It's our school-wide system, provides clear expectations and rewards students for positive behaviors and expected behaviors. Next is FBA, so Functional Behavior Assessments. It's a process that identifies specific target behaviors. So if a kiddo is struggling in class, we conduct an FBA through observations and feedback from the team to see what might be driving that behavior. And then a behavior intervention plan is a plan that's based on the results of an FBA. So if we figure out that they're trying to avoid a particular task or subject, we try to come up with a plan to address that, to help the kiddo be as successful as possible and remain in class and continue working and learning. So we're going to constantly go back to some of these, but awesome. So the next thing is just a timeline of SWIS and PBIS throughout the district. We've been kind of busy over the last few years. So 2015, 2016 was the first year that we had non-contracted behavior intervention plans and FBAs in the district. 2016, 2017, we contracted with the state for a coach for PBIS to help improve our Tier 1. Reintroduction of Swiss Suite within all the schools, so we brought back that data tracking system. We hired ABA-approved behavior interventionists, and that was the year that we started doing some of the social emotional screeners that we're going to talk about later. And then we had our summer second best institute. We coined that here at the district, and we had, I think that year we had almost 50 people that participated throughout the district to help improve our systems. The following year, we had building-based PBIS coordinators to help kind of coordinate some of that stuff in the building and kind of work to get everybody on the same page. We started rewriting our district handbooks for PBIS and revamping it within the schools, which we'll show some pictures later on of like what that looks like in our buildings. All the schools were officially recognized by Vermont PBIS as PBIS schools, which was great because when we started this, I think just one of our elementary schools was like officially recognized, and now we have all of them. Ongoing Tier 1 trainings, District Crisis Prevention Institute, so we have CPI trainers in the district, LGBTQ in-house district trainers, and creation of our district-wide risk of harm protocol, which we've been using quite a bit, actually, to try and meet the needs of kiddos who are in risk of self-harm or other things. Timeline continued. Like I said, we were kind of busy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Going really fast. I know that's.
Sorry.
Can we go back one more?
Yeah.
The very last thing, you said creation of district-wide risk of harm protocol.
Yep.
So when you listed the data, or the, in the first slide, why isn't that one, the risk of harm protocol, included in, is that is it a database? What is it?
So the protocol, so we had there were some situations throughout the school year of kiddos that might have reported that they wanted to hurt themselves or others or were engaging in self-harm, and we didn't really know, like, who do you call? Like, who do we go and get? Do we call one of the psychs? Do we call the clinicians? Do we call Jay? What do we do? And do we let the kid walk down the hallway by themselves if they're talking about hurting themselves? Well, no. So we wanted to come up, we worked with CSAC pretty extensively and tried to use some of those community resources to come together and come up with a system that was simple to follow. It's a one-page document that staff have access to, and it's just call the office knows to call, like, don't leave the kid alone, office knows to call one of these 6 people that are there, and then we'll come and we'll do, it's a risk of harm assessment that we found, it's called I think we use the Columbia Risk of Harm Rating Scales, and then if we determine if the kiddo needs more supports, there's also access where we've had students go to through CSAC to get more support so that we're trying to ensure that the kiddos are as safe as possible.
Thank you.
Sorry,
That's awesome. I'm really glad you stopped. I
Awesome,
appreciate that a lot.
thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I get in this zone where I just keep going. So then for 2018, 2019, all elementary school staff were trained in responsive classroom, which really emphasized building relationships, a community within the classroom. So all the staff were trained. All of our elementary staff were also trained for the LGBTQ Out for Safe Schools. So just about everybody has these badges now, which has been really great. Morning meetings have been held in all classrooms. There's monthly all-school morning meetings where we're recognizing students with their peers, celebrating birthdays, recognizing staff, individual student recognition. We've been piloting check-in, check-outs in several classrooms. Positive postcards were sent home to students throughout the year. Every student has received them from their teachers. We've had over 70% Tier 1 PBIS implementation in all of our elementary schools. So there's a survey that we do every year by the state. First year we did it, we were like 40-ish%, and now we're above 70% in all the elementary schools, which is awesome. In the high school, we were at like 60-ish%, but there were some areas that we've been working to address, and we've made improvements. And then we were asked to present some of the social emotional screener data in our process at the state conference this past fall, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And then, so looking ahead and to what we've been doing now, teams from each elementary school were invited to go to Lake Maury and participate in a Tier 2 targeted training to get some of those kiddos who are like the frequent flyers to the office, to come up with a system of checking in with them and try to figure out strategies to help keep them in the class and keep them where they can learn. We've also started through that unifying our forms. We had different forms for like Ferrisburg, Virgins, Addison, all had different forms, and now we're all going to be using the same ones. We've worked together to design similar forms in unifying the handbooks for majors and minors. And then, so looking ahead, continuing to implement some of those Tier 2 things we just spent the year learning, we're working on. Any questions on these ones?
Check out, check in forms?
Yep.
Is that like, what? You don't have to go on very long, I'm sorry, I know Sue's like.
I could talk all
Lori.
day. But, so check in,
Yeah,
check
don't
out.
talk all day, because we want to go home. But
Fair
thank you.
enough, fair enough. So they're just forms of a kiddo, if there's a particular thing that they're working on, like I raised my hand, or I didn't kick Susie. You know, you earn a 0, 1, or a 2, or like, you know, you have to turn it around. And we made different forms for depending on grade level. So K1, 2 have a different form from 3 through 6, which are more in line with roars, stars, and the soaring eagles that but all the forms look exactly the same. There's just some different depending on the school that they're in, so that it's more aligned with each school's PBIS, but it looks the same.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stop talking.
You did good.
Thank you.
So all of our, there's a thing that's called CPI training, and that's Crisis Prevention Institute training. And we have a rule within the state that's called Rule 4500. And we created a policy in the district called C34 in 2017. And the policy is to create a positive and safe learning environment in our schools. And in order to do that, we had a majority of our elementary school teachers receive CPI Level 1 training. And that just means that they have general strategies that they use to de-escalate or to calm students when they're in an elevated state, or if they have behaviors that are might become dangerous down the line. But they have some strategies that they learned. So 100% of our Virgins Elementary preschool and FCS staff were trained in crisis prevention strategies this year. 30% of staff from Addison were trained in crisis prevention. And small groups of staff members from each school, each elementary school, were trained in CPI Level 2 to restrain students if they are a harm to themselves or other people. So they might be bolting towards cars or things like that, where you obviously would want to hold a child back so they get harmed. But they were trained in the proper way to do it so that they weren't harming the child. So they weren't like grabbing them, or they were showed how to respectfully hold a child back without hurting them further. And then for next year, the district plans to train all pre-K and 12 staff in CPI Level 1, so that's no hands-on, that's all verbal, it's all about your body language training to de-escalate students. And then again, train the small groups of staff members from each of the schools in that Level 2 if it's needed, but really that's our last resort. We really don't want to do that.
Can you just briefly say why FCS and VBS got all the bang for the buck and ACS didn't?
I'm not really sure, but I know that staff had the opportunity to say that they didn't want the training.
So that may be what happened?
That may
It was
be a
offered to
reason
all of
why.
them?
I'm not sure. Oh, sorry, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, good question.
Thank you.
So, level 2 is only offered to staff, particularly paraprofessionals, who work directly with a student who has a known pattern of becoming physically aggressive as a way of expressing their need. So we don't actually want to train staff to put hands on for any reason. So that is selected by administration and CARA in terms of who's eligible to even take level 2. That's level 2 answer.
Okay.
Level 1 answer is, this is a training that's provided annually. Once you have it, you can refresh in a 4-hour training, give or take. Or if you don't have it, it's a much longer, full-day training, or a little longer. And some of that, honestly, is logistics and time, and the availability of the trainers. So this past year, we had 2 trainers. They both work in schools, and so to release them to find in-service times to do that becomes complex. This year, we just switched. I'm actually now one of the trainers in the district for next year, as is Mr. Fetters, Michael Fetters, who's a special educator in our building. So both of the building trainers to do this work are both at ACS, actually. So I'm quite certain that within the next year, you'll see my goal, and I think our goal would be for 100% of staff to have the de-escalation portion of that training, because it's just good communication. And by the way, it works well with children and adults, right? So it's just good communication skills, but it has no physical intervention piece. I think some of our staff had it, and then it expired throughout the year, and their schedule didn't match the one opportunity to get retrained, right? So some of it was logistical timing. But I'm confident at ACS, given the number of people we do have trained and our crisis team and how it works, that when that kind of a situation arises, we're aware of who has the highest skill set and what kind of RAP team comes in to support that student when that issue arises. So we've done very well this year in terms of safety and RAP teams, and I do think, I recognize there's room for all staff to be fully trained, and I would anticipate that being done in the coming year.
I mean, I think that's a good point. ACS is a very small school.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So for this year, we have had 6 incidents where we've had to use this C-34 ruling, where we have had to restrain students because they were of risk of harm to themselves or other people. And so we followed the procedure for each of these instances, where we had the school crisis teams respond, and the CPI level 2 person restrained the child. Document was sent home to the parents to notify what happened, what was the situation, why they needed to be restrained, because it is our last resort. We really don't want to do that. And then there's a debriefing part you invite the parents in, you have a conversation, and talk about developing a safety plan, usually for these students. And additionally, all the building administrators are responsible for providing a summary of restraints and seclusions, and the superintendent, reports that we've met the criteria for these restraints and seclusions. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. Nick, did you want to provide?
Yes, this is just more of the PBIS stuff in our elementary schools that we redesigned when we were getting together as a team in the district. Madison changed all their stuff to Soaring Eagles, Ferrisburg Stars, and they just made some minor changes, and then Roars, River Gens, the Thundercats, the old school logo. And then PBIS at the middle and high school being the 5 guidelines. And there's some pictures of some of the PBIS stuff, like the Global Day of Play, that's been a pretty big hit for all the kids.
Right, so I'm going to be talking about some of the school-wide information system data. So first of all, we're going to be talking about major and minor behaviors. And so this is a list of what the minor behaviors are. So when we're talking about what makes a behavior minor or major, what makes it minor is the intensity as well as the frequency of the behavior. So you can see there's some stuff like defiance, a dress code violation, inappropriate language, being tardy, and a technology violation, just to name a few of them. And when we go to major behaviors, we're talking about behaviors that are a little bit more severe. And so we're seeing like abusive language, inappropriate language, profanity, arson, bomb threat, bullying, disrespect, defiance, insubordination. Some of those we haven't seen, and we're happy to say that. So first, all of this data here I'm going to be talking about is going to be talking about the middle school and high school, so right here at VUHS. So Right here's a breakdown of the months of the year and all the Swiss incidents that were reported for the months. So we started off in August with none, slowly ramped our way up to October, and then by the time we got to November, December, between the holiday breaks as well as the kids becoming more settled into their schedules, we saw a little bit of a decline there. And then after our February break and up into March there, we saw a little bit more of a rise. And so we only took data up until April when we started making this for you guys here. We don't have the May information right now, unfortunately.
So that includes both major and minor?
Yes, so this includes all major and minor behaviors.
And do we have the same kind of thing for a previous year?
Yes, so speaking of that, right here was last year's information. So we see, this right here just talks about where the behavior took place. And so this is from last year. We see that a vast majority of all of the behaviors took place within the classroom last year at the high school. And then we see the other ones in descending order there, going from right to left. Now, when we look at the number on the side here, you see that class alone was about 300, a little more than 300 from last year. Flashing forward to the 2019 school year, we see the highest is class again, but that's not even at 120. So we saw a vast decrease in the amount of Swiss referrals from last year to this year.
Do you have the answer?
I do not know what happened,
Good
but
news, why?
apparently what we're doing is working a little
Right.
bit, so
All the hard work.
hopefully, continues that in that direction.
And we only have 2 years of data, right?
Yeah,
It's a
so,
little
right,
sketchy
small
to-
sample size.
Right.
So by the time, this time next year, we'll have 3 years in a row, and, going forward, we'll continue with this and have more information.
All right, thank you.
So again, this is going to be information from last year. So looking at what those 300 incidents actually looked like what were they? And so the ones with an M next to them were the minors. So when you see the most common one was minor disrespect, and then minor tech violation. And so when you see after that, there was skipping, minor disruption, inappropriate language, and so on and so forth. You can see there were a lot of them there. Going into, I'm sorry, were you?
Well, keep going back.
I mean, this has 100 on it, the last one had 300, so I'm wondering, that seems a little.
So
No,
this is
this
per
is the-
behavior.
Got
So
it.
that's where the numbers come into play.
Appreciate that.
No problem. So now for this year's data, and again, we dropped it down because of just the amount was less. This year, we're seeing minor disrespect and minor tech violation as well, are being the top two. And going down in there, again, we're seeing tobacco be a little bit higher, but
Is skipping entirely gone?
skipping, we didn't have any write-ups for skipping this year.
One incident could have multiple behaviors, is that true? Or is that-
So how it works is when an incident is reported, the reporting individual checks off on the area that it falls into, and I think you have to choose one. Is that correct? Yes, just one.
The primary one, there may be more than one document on the form,
Mm-hmm.
but the person entering it decides what was the primary. So they may have sworn and used physical aggression, but we would say physical aggression is more serious, so we would
Mhm.
take the higher ranking behavior as the one to enter.
Yes.
So I noticed your farthest to the left is disturbing.
Yep, so what that one is, it's not actually a bomb threat. What that one is, it's considered threat of weapon in the form there. And so we did have the one incident here at the high school that was dealt with, and it was taken serious because, we can't be lackadaisical about stuff like this. But yes, definitely concerning.
I'm just wondering what PAGG is.
That?
Physical aggression.
Yeah, physical aggression.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we go back to the other one? I just want to see
Sure.
where tobacco is on last year.
It was
compared to
lower.
this year.
Sure, so the thing we want to look at though also is just the amount
Right.
there, and with last year's being a little bit more, so tobacco is over here, so yeah, around like, yeah, a little more than 5 or so.
Does that include vaping?
Yes, so tobacco includes vaping.
So we actually ended up with more tobacco this year.
Correct, yes.
Is there no drugs on there?
So there were no reported drug ones, no.
That's good.
There was pretty
So
sure.
are there, there's obviously a bunch of unreported incidents, like you resolve them before it gets to this stage kind of thing? Is that something you?
So do you want to speak to that, Stephanie, as far as being reported?
Depends on how they're reported.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these are reported, these are students that have ended up in RRC or in other way have been dealt with outside of the classroom. So it rises to that level, classroom-based, I would say a tech violation there, a minor would be a student failing to do what they were supposed to do, or maybe on an inappropriate webpage or something like that. So they probably addressed it in the classroom a couple of times, and it's happened enough so that the teacher has elicited help from someone else. But it's hard to know because I'd have to go through the.
Right.
you know,
It's more
none of these are
case-by-case
sticking in my
basis.
head, so.
Other than reporter,
Yeah.
yes.
So, I'm interested in the categories, and the categories that are squishier. I assume the Swiss categories are because they're what the Swiss suite provides.
Correct, yes.
with. So something like defiance is an interpersonal thing.
Right.
And so are we also tracking which teachers and staff members are more likely to call on, to
So
call
it is available to
students?
see who
Yes.
who is reporting which incidents, yes.
And so then there's professional development or some kind of interaction
We've
that's.
got CPI then.
Correct,
Yes,
yes.
right. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Well, it would
Oh,
be
I'm
nice
sorry.
when you did your chart, if you broke the minor and the major into different colors.
Yes, so this chart here is actually taken directly from the Swiss suite here, but we have made our own charts for the elementary school portion here, so it is possible to separate minor and major. So if that's something that's helpful, that's something we could look into doing for next time. So this breaks down the referral at the middle school, high school here by grade, and you can see the 8th grade is a little bit difficult this year. But we, yes. You can see like down, once the kids get down to the 12th grade there, they're a little more interested in other things than causing a ruckus.
Yeah, I'm curious if that 8th grade class trends that way.
Yeah.
Yep, so that's one of the benefits exactly of seeing continuous data from previous years, is we are able to track and see which classes are the
Do
heavy
you have
hitters.
last year's data for that?
So it is available, but we do not have it in our slide here. So all of this information we do have on the Swiss suite, so we are able to access back several years, as far back as we started using Swiss again.
It would be interesting to see if last year it was the 7th grade that was the problem.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you very much, Sheila.
Yeah.
So now all of this data going forward here is going to be about the elementary schools. And so here we listed out the behaviors as they occurred for each one. Again, the minors are listed with the minor in front of them for this display here. We do have a chart coming up here, but this one lists every single one from the lowest to the highest. On the next one, we do list, I think, like the top several. I want to give you guys a chance to look at this if you want. So,
Is physical aggression a fight?
so physical aggression could be anything from just punching somebody versus an actual full-blown fight as well. So it doesn't necessarily, could be like someone becoming,
It is contact.
it's contact, yes.
And is there contact with peers and teachers?
Yes.
Or could it be a teacher or a student?
So that could be either one. It's a little bit broadly defined. And so where the incidents took place here in the elementary school, again, the classroom, just like we were talking about the middle school, high school, within the classroom is where most of the incidents are going to be occurring. You know, all of this information for the elementary schools are across all 3 elementary schools. So we combine the data for all 3 schools for this. You can see the playground was next on there, then the bus, which is an area, unfortunately, where we don't have adult supervision beyond the bus driver, typically. So that can be a little bit more difficult to keep in control there.
Who we hope is paying attention to the road.
Hopefully, yes. So here we see the behaviors per month here across all elementary schools, and just like we saw with the middle school, high school, we saw that incline from the beginning of the year until October, and then once those breaks start hitting in the holiday months of November, December, we see it drop down again. And then, unlike with the middle school and high school, where there was a spike in the March, we can see that the March data for the elementary schools here was relatively stable with the rest of the behaviors from November on. So behaviors per grade here, we're seeing we got some feisty kindergartners, as well as some second graders who can be some fun, and then going on up. And just like we were talking about watching the data from last year, just to see if that 8th grade class was as disruptive as a 7th grade class, we can see the 6th grade class from this year going into next year, how that was going to look like as 7th graders. All right.
Okay, so another source of data that we use is called the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, or the YRBS. This is a national school-based survey taken every other year, which is every odd year. It's easy to remember that way. The students just took it in 2019, so just feels like moments ago, but a couple months ago. At Addison Northwest, there's 2 surveys that are given, high school 9th through 12th, and middle school 6th through 8. Here at Addison Northwest, we do all in-house here 7 through 12. We do not survey the 6th graders at this point. The survey is anonymous, voluntary, and it's a requirement of one of our grants, our drug and alcohol grant. This is just a lovely picture, 2 lovely pictures of our Getting to Y teams. These are middle school students on this side over here, and on the right over there is the high school leadership team. Both of these groups had the opportunity to go to Montpelier and spend the day getting trained on how to read the data and then make action plans for what they saw of concern in their school. And they did a great job. They had some community outreach, informational nights, community dialogue nights, which was very informative. That's me. The YRBS monitors health risk behaviors that contribute to things like unintentional injuries, sexual behaviors that can lead to unintended pregnancy or sexually transmitted diseases, alcohol, drug abuse, tobacco, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to look at some data tonight, and we're going to really specifically focus on violence and bullying, mental health, youth assets, and protective factors in our schools. So some of you might be familiar with these from last year. They're very similar slides, but the piece that we did not have last year is our own data. So we have Vermont Middle School, and then our school, Addison Northwest Middle School, and then high school, Vermont High School, and then our data. This slide particularly here is the percent. Again, these are percentage, not individual numbers, of students who reported being bullied in the last 30 days. We have data showing 2013, 15, and 17, so you can see the trend. Percent remains the same or decreased between 2015 and 17, with Addison Northwest being less than the Vermont percentages. Oh, jeez. Okay. Percentage of students electronically reported saying electronically bullied within the last 12 months. You can see those numbers. The spike at the middle school definitely is of some concern, looking like the 8th grade is kind of that target area to watch for. Percent of students who did not go to school because they said that they felt unsafe. Numbers are definitely getting better. Fewer students skipped school because they felt unsafe in 2017 than 15. I think the data that we really try and look at also is just making sure that all students feel safe. And sometimes these numbers, the LGBTQ community, are of concern in that, where they feel less secure. Percent of
divulged in the data?
there is, yes. They just this in 2017, they really started to extrapolate out the data and look at it a little bit more on, yes, all of that.
So the kids say, I
Yep, that's one of the questions. Yes, yes, absolutely. Percent of students who purposely hurt themselves. We talked about that earlier. This would be self-harm as cutting or burning, or more so. This is not a question on the middle school. That probably I would anticipate change in the future. But the high school, again, our numbers are very similar to the Vermont standards, or the Vermont percentages. Percent of students who felt so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or longer, and have stopped doing their normal activities, was something that we really wanted to take a look at. Our numbers are definitely better than the Vermont average. Again, something that we want to keep an eye on. And then this one here, percent of students who actually made a suicide plan over the last 12 months. And this one is very startling. I think all of us anticipate this number to be 0. So it's something to, even though while the percentages have decreased, it still is right at or above the goal of what the Vermont Healthy Vermont 2020 goal is of 8%.
In looking at, you're giving us an aggregate here. Is it, when you read the data, do you have access to grade level
Yes.
differences?
Yes.
And so there are plans, again, that you respond, you collectively
Yes.
respond. Okay.
And we can break that down at any time. It just sometimes, yeah,
No,
this
no,
is
right.
a
No,
this is
lot.
good for us.
Yeah,
It's
this is
a
a
lot.
lot.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there's, just for one survey, it's, a thick report that
Yeah.
anyone can look through at any time. It's on the website. It's really easy to look at. They give data briefs, so they take, certain populace and look at it different ways. So it's a lot of really good information if you have the time to look at it. The students here in different classes, I know Nancy definitely in statistics uses, this website for her students also, with very similar charts, I hear. So again, that one. And then the last couple slides are just giving us an idea about how supported students feel. This one here, percent of students who agree that teachers really care about them and give them a lot of encouragement while they're here at school. We have some really high numbers, and that speaks a lot. And the last one, I believe, is do they agree that in their community they feel like they matter to people? And again, our numbers are really very comparable to the Vermont numbers. That's it. Any questions on YRBS? Right.
So I'm going to try to go through these quickly because I know we're running out of time. So please stop me if there's something you want to ask. So just looking at the YRBS data, it's kind of alarming for some of the questions. And so just to look at what social emotional supports we have in our district right now, we have 1 or 2 school-based clinicians or 3 in this building, and 1 school counselor or per school, full or part-time, 1 school psychologist per elementary school, guidance classes that are provided by school counselors to all students in the elementary schools, and 1 nurse per school, full or part-time. Oh, in the high school, we have 3 school-based clinicians, 3 school counselors. We rotate in here as the 3 school psychologists, so we're not full-time here. Substance abuse prevention counselors, 1 school nurse, and the resource response center. So based on the YRBS data, we don't know who any of those students are, and so we can't offer the supports to them if they would like them. So a couple years ago, we introduced the pilot study for the social emotional screener, and we used what's called the My Sabers and the Sabers. The Sabers was what the teachers, they would rate their students on their behavior, on their emotional status, and then the My Sabers is what the students reported. And that was a screener that was given 2 to 3 times per year. The students were rated by their teachers, the students rated themselves, and then we looked at the data. The issue with this screening data was that it wasn't actually a screener. It kind of flagged all of our students, and so instead of being helpful, it was kind of saying, these are all of the weaknesses for majority of students, instead of getting to like the cohort of students who we wanted to provide additional services to, if that makes sense. Yes. Yes, we do have a lot of social emotional supports for all of our students, but we were really looking for the kids who needed one-on-one counseling or small group counseling, or if we could recommend services outside of school for situations that go beyond what everybody else has provided.
And what we looked at with the Sabers, when you drill down to the questions, they were very broad and could red flag for a lot of things. They weren't really specific.
For example, there's one question that's like, I like to spend time alone. And so it would flag the student as withdrawn. And so we were like, okay, this is not a good, that's why we used it as a pilot study, because we didn't want to make conclusions based on that.
Are you looking at a different tool?
Yes, so this year we used a different tool, thank you, it's just a segue.
Sorry.
And it's called the Behavior and Emotional Screening System, and we used it for grades 4 through 9. And these students could report clinically significant responses in areas of emotional, behavioral, adaptive levels. And so if there was any level of concern for those initial students on that screener, we then spoke with them and asked them to complete more questions just to have a deeper look. I have a second look, and that's basically what we do for when we make decisions about reading or math in our district. We have a first level screener, and then we do a second look just to make sure that they need additional supports. So yes.
So these students that got the second level screener, did they know they were the only ones getting the second level? So did that make them, how to put it, possibly answer their questions in a different way to make themselves look in a different, does that make sense?
Yes.
You know, because
It does.
if I knew that Chris and I were both tested and then you came and tested me again, well, there must have been something wrong with me, so I gotta be careful about my answers.
Right. Yes, thank you. A lot of our students did voice that was a difficulty, that they received a pass to come and take the additional assessment, and they were placed in different rooms, or they were with other students who were taking it, so it didn't seem as though they were the only ones taking it. However, students said that the next time they took the first screener, they might change some of their answers so they wouldn't have to take the second screener.
That's kind of where I'm getting, like, I don't know how
Yeah, so
valid the second one would be.
the one thing I would say, and I have said to our administrators when we presented this information, is that it's just another tool. It's not the only tool that we would use to provide additional services to our students, but it's just getting at some of the students who might really feel more comfortable reporting those things to a computer rather than someone in person, and more of our internalizing students. So we might not get all of our students who need additional support, but we get more than we were before.
And the students are the only ones that report. If the child flags, the teacher also then does a very deep dive, about 100 questions to look at both social, emotional, and adaptive. So there's 2 tiers to the stool that is being looked at, and then there is the option to add a parent tier at some point in time as well.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Would it be terribly difficult or expensive to just give everyone both tiers?
That's kind of where I was going with that.
It is expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, it's also very time consuming.
And it's very time consuming, yes. So for the second look, it took about an hour for these students to complete it versus the screener was about 15 minutes. But yes, it would be nice to be able to look at the strengths and weaknesses for all of our students like that, but the time and the money kind
I
of.
also want to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So at the elementary schools, I know that we're able to go in to the classrooms, like myself, I'm able to push into the classrooms all the time, and the kids just kind of say, oh, it's my turn to go and work with Dylan. And so they don't necessarily know that they're being given something different than the other students, because I'm in the classroom so often, taking multiple kids out almost every day. On top of that, this assessment that we're talking about doing for the second look, the BASC 3 there, the Behavior Assessment System for Children 3, is a nationally normed assessment that is based upon thousands of answers. So we have a lot of good research behind this specific tool that we are using. The one flaw in it is that we are relying on students to report their own concerns right now.
Right.
So some students are hesitant to report their concerns that they are feeling. However, some students are also very forthcoming and will really shock you and surprise you. We had several students this year that did flag on the second look screeners here that we gave, that we were like, wait, that student flagged? So we were able to get in there, and with that deep dive, we were really looking for those students that may have flown under the radar previously. And as far as giving the second look to every student, there are some very invasive questions that are asked in that second look screener, where we may ask, have you ever thought about killing yourself before? And other test items that may be a little bit more sensitive to students that if they don't flag as necessarily needing that we don't want to put them through that undue stress of having to answer or think about a question of that regard as well.
And some of those questions aren't, so the questions change based on your age.
Right.
So the 4th grade students are not going to get a question like that. It's not going to be worded that way.
Yes.
Same with 5th grade, 6th grade. And they're not, so 4th graders might get 100 questions. The seniors, because we use this for assessing kids when we're doing reevaluations and initial evaluations, they get up to 200 plus questions.
Okay.
And they're worded very differently, and just to throw that, that's kind of shocking.
Yeah. So for grades 4 through 9, 385 students took the screener. The number of students for the BESS who showed concern was 138. So then we asked them to complete the second look screener, and this is across the district. The number of students who took the BASC was 113, so some of them did not take it. They either opted out or other reasons they couldn't take it. And then from that, 61 students were elevated in areas on the BASC 3. So that's where we had a conversation with them, talked to their parents, offered additional supports if they wanted to receive them. And of course, on every step the conversation at the second level. We would say, you have the opportunity to use these services, they're available to you, this is what's at the high school, this is what at the elementary school. And it was a really great conversation. A lot of parents don't actually know what services are provided at the schools, so it was a nice way to educate them as well. So these are the number of students who reported concern in each area, with the highest in the area of depression. This, just to not belittle it, but it was also given in January. So some of the seasonal affective disorder pieces could be in play here as well, with anxiety and self-esteem with the next highest pieces.
I'm gonna take us home. So what did we learn? Short answer, a lot. Communication with staff and parents is key. Trying to figure out, this is our first year using this extensive tool. So figuring out a way to communicate efficiently and effectively with staff and parents to go through the questions, and with the students to go over, well, why did you answer it this way? Allowing enough time for completion of the screeners and assessments. As the team said, it takes a while. And we also had a lot of students that were absent, so we had to come up with days to make up some of those. And it really carved into some of the time. And it's also in the assessment window that we had for the winter, so it was really, we were kind of vying for kiddos' time. Reflection on utilizing our resources, and how we use our resources, how we use our school counselors, the psychologists, the clinicians, how we can better utilize some of that. And then proper screening tools, SABR's, every single kid flagged. This one, not so much. And then, so next steps, teaching the community. One thing we really learned is that we can have so many resources and it's still probably not going to be enough to reach all of our kids. So informational booths for families and community members. We also learned through evaluating kiddos, and just some parents and some people in the community aren't able to come to the school. They're working 5 jobs. They're doing tons of things. So reaching out to them and getting out in the community. So sharing some strategies regarding anxiety, depression, supporting our LGBTQ kiddos, and going over the YRBS results. Having these booths at open houses, community events, sporting events, churches, things that people will go to where they feel safe and able to have those kind of conversations. And so the goal is really to engage the community in an open discussion about meeting the needs of our students. And then, so research, like these are some links that, I don't know if this gets shared with everybody, I imagine it does.
I think we'll link to this.
Some recent articles that were published of just like some of the best ways to reach our students is through their families and their guardians, through the community. So there's lots of strategies on how to have conversations with your kids and how to have conversations with families and students, and to target adults to help reach students and treat their anxiety or depression, withdrawal. And then there's another article that was published like a week ago, maybe. So many families are struggling to find help for their kiddos because there's long wait lists everywhere to get in. So if we're trying at the school, we can have these conversations with your kid and make them feel supported and loved and heard at home. So I think that's it. Is that it? Any questions? We talked a lot.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, we're done.
Can I take my computer? Okay.
Thank you.
Turn it on.
All right. Great. So that brings us to our board and committee reports. Superintendent's report. Wow, this was a very long report with a lot of great information in it. Right. Is there anything that you want to add, first of all, or is everything? Okay.
But we can do that now, or when you're approving the hires, it's up to you.
Well, you can do it now, since the rest of them are in there. if you have
Okay.
it.
The music educator was hired. Her name is Janelle Tatro. And and her, just to match the other credentials that I shared before, the other employees, she is has a master's degree from Northern Vermont University, which is the former Johnson State, and that's where she did her undergrad as well. She did her student teaching at Bristol Elementary, so we're happy to welcome her. She's shared between ACS and FCS. And yeah, I don't know if you have questions for other sections. There was a lot included there.
Yeah, we had bus ridership, communication plan, the websites are gonna go live June 19th, that's so exciting. New
Lori?
leadership teams.
Yeah, the leadership today. Where is Diana? I think I'll send her an email. She would be very happy to do that. So I just, so this was really helpful, B20, guidelines for board responsibility and hiring. That's kind of, should have that checklist.
Actually, it's now added to the board resources folder also.
Oh, awesome. Is that in the Google Drive?
Yes, it is.
Board resources, I gotta find that. And then, tell me level 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the supervision and evaluation.
So level 1 is teachers that are new to us or new to their career. Level 2 is where they go after that initial period. So level 2 is the majority of our teachers that are veteran, that have been here. Level 3 is teachers in need of additional supports and assistance. And level 4 is essentially a path toward non-renewal. So that's I think was included in the prior report. In last month's report, I had.
The description of the
I had given you the
levels.
description for the levels, but then folks had asked for the percentage of folks within any of those categories. So this is just a follow-up to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's an annual report? We're
Yes.
gonna get
This
that
is an annual
Yes.
report to you,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
And it's important to really realize that people can be going between levels throughout the year. So this number isn't like, you may not stay at the level that you're on. A teacher could move from level 2 to level 3 or back again at any point during the year, depending on what's happening.
So, I mean, I guess as a board member, I'm thinking, we want most of our people in level 2. We want all of our people in level, well, no, we want some people in level 1 too, because we want new teachers, right? But,
Right.
I mean, okay.
Right, and I mean, level 3 isn't necessarily, shouldn't be interpreted as a negative thing necessarily. Needing additional supports in your practice is not, it doesn't have to be strictly evaluative. It can be supportive, you know what I'm saying? It can be formative, it can be a growth opportunity. So I wouldn't necessarily consider that in a negative light.
Okay, thank you. The communication plan, it's wonderful.
I'm glad.
Yes, thank you for the job descriptions too.
And the job description.
We're sort of bouncing all over.
I
the place.
know, we are bouncing all over.
Maybe I should just talk briefly about that, just so that you're aware. So these were developed primarily at our central office. They were vetted internally. The positions that are school-based, the principals glanced at them, looked at them, but the teachers, haven't had a chance to work through these and are anxious to give feedback. So the process for that is through the goal-setting process next year to sort of review those. So every fall, teachers meet with administration, set goals, that kind of thing. So there'll be an opportunity for them to weigh in on these and say, like, there's something missing in my job description, or this doesn't quite capture it, or, whatever that might look like. And these can be improved upon through that solicitation of the feedback. So that's the next step in this, but we have them now.
Yes.
And that's
Thank
moving
you.
us in a forward direction.
You have to start somewhere.
That's right, yep.
Thank you.
Yep, and then there's the ridership piece, which is based on the bus routes and so forth, so.
Can I ask a question about that one?
Yeah.
You have Virgins Elementary route bus, 61 students. So does that mean some of the Virgins Elementary students are also on these high school buses? Is that the way, how is this broken out here? Because I think the high school buses also pick up elementary kids, right?
I think so. I mean, this was given to me by, I'm not as familiar with the routes.
Okay.
As you all probably are,
Right.
folks that live here. So I have more specificity if you'd like to review the street maps and
I don't want the
so forth.
street maps.
I have that level of detail, but,
Yeah, I think there's 4 buses that pick up at the elementary school, so I think the ones listed under the high school are
Yeah.
actually also. the
that makes
elementary.
sense.
They're both.
Yeah, depending
They're
on
both.
where the route they need to go
Right.
to get home. Yeah, this
Somebody's
is just
got
how
a
it's
hand up over
distinguished in
there.
our contract.
Okay. Is there a hand over here? Oh,
Like,
yes, Mr. Dubois.
No kids come from the high school on Jackie's bus.
So she's only the elementary school, but the high school buses are both? Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't that where that figure per planned rider is? The money figure?
Oh, I think that's still, yeah, and there's
Yeah.
not any more people, I was just,
It's,
where they're,
and that's a disturbing figure, and even more so when you realize that all the kids that are assigned to those buses don't ride them.
so
Because
this,
that's the classes broken out by where they live and where the bus routes are, correct?
that's $870 per rider per
Year, annual.
annually.
Annually.
Okay.
Yeah,
But
so-
there's maybe
So it's like
50% of the kids are riding,
5
so
bucks
it's
a day?
double that. Right?
Well, you're just pulling 50%
I'm-
out of.
I am,
Where?
but
Okay. All right.
And also,
Yeah, Lori.
thank you, sorry. This is only to and from school. This is not after-school activities or
Correct.
any.
Right.
Field
dinner
trips,
Or
right.
anything else.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. And then there was the climate survey data as well.
Right, which I just included a link to those surveys and so that you could see, the detail at whatever level of detail you'd like to see. And then we had about an hour with the data so far as an administrative team, and we've just made some preliminary observations that I've included here. This is baseline information for us, and knowing that the survey may change next year. It's good information for us, and we'll be looking at it more closely. As I mentioned the last time when I went over the continuous improvement plan, our goal with the development of that plan is that the work of considering the data is kind of ongoing. So different questions on the survey pertain to different aspects of our programming. So we may just look at one question, but look at it across the board next year at a particular meeting, and then come back a different day and look at another question. So looking at it from start to finish across all 3 groups is a little much, but that's what we tried to do in our first hour, just to take a broad brush stroke.
Right.
So we need to go
Makes
back
sense.
with a finer grain size to really consider this more deeply. Now, we're doing a book study this summer. If anybody
know.
wants to join in, we'll be on Twitter Live on those days, talking about a book.
So you're not on Twitter, there's no other access, right?
Right. Which is kind of part of the point, too.
Want me on Twitter?
We're trying to get more of our educators. It's a huge resource for educators. There's an awful lot of professional development available on Twitter, so the more folks that are on there, the more they can kind of curate the information they're looking for. And
Is that right?
yeah, it's a pretty remarkable, and it's a way to stay connected for the summer. So it's just something we're doing sort of for fun, but also maybe we'll start a new habit for folks next year. Yeah, and our website go-live date is listed there. You've probably noticed that we're starting to use some of the graphics and the logos and for our branding and so forth, and that you'll be seeing much more of. And again, with that, they'll be ready to go live, but then they'll be providing us training. And it's just like when we did the facilities improvements and then started living in the building, like that light switch isn't working correctly, or whatever it is, right? That's gonna happen a little bit with a website. So it'll just be patient while we get everything in order, but I'm really confident that the folks that are managing the back end of the content management of our websites will find it very user-friendly, and I don't expect there to be an awful lot of problems with that.
If there are any, is the group that we've consulted or contracted with,
Yes.
are they still available
Yes,
for a
they
certain
are our
period of time?
service providers for,
Okay.
yeah, they'll help us with anything that's especially a major flaw, which I don't think we'll have. And then there was the public safety meeting and some notes about that, and then the hiring updates.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any additional questions for Sheila?
You're a busy woman.
She's very busy.
We're all busy. You're welcome.
Okay, business managers report.
My busy manager.
The date is postponed.
The
Yes.
day is postponed.
That was the best report ever.
I know, and I keep on coming back to you guys and say, oh, not yet, not yet. Well, it's finally here, so yay. They postponed the uniform chart of accounts by a year. We're still going to transition our chart of accounts because we're already there and ready to do that. And we feel like it's going to be good for our district to kind of get one full year under our belt, not only for ourselves, because we're going to be learning at the same time all of our staff are. So we hope that that will give us more time to kind of perfect like all the business rules that go along with that chart of accounts. But as far as the software, we're going to delay until the last possible date and let them work out all the kinks and bugs before we move in. I think that's pretty consistent with what I've been sharing, so we're very thankful to see that that delay came through, and that's actually a 2-year delay instead of 1-year delay.
So the date now is what again?
The deadline is July 1st of 2022 for the actual e-finance software move. There's also some other changes and delays surrounding Act 173, and that's the special education. And specifically for my department, what really affects us is the funding formula changes that they were going to implement. It'll affect your budgets for the next budget build that we do. We were going to have to change to that funding formula for next year's budget build, and now we will delay that at least 1 more year. So that's good for us because the scenario we walked through with Kara and I going to a training basically said we were going to lose funding in that new formula. So at least in the first year, if not more.
That does not surprise me.
Subsequent. So, and I walked us through our financial reports. You can see they are more than what I would call extremely tight. We had a couple surprises this round. I didn't run your reports through May 31st. I ran them all the way through the day I was writing this report because I was trying to capture everything that I already knew was in there. The things we're looking at now is we are reconciling through the HRAs and trying to true up how much expense we have for claims versus what we encumbered or estimated. I don't have that final figure yet. I've actually just barely gotten through 2000. We do it by calendar years now, so I just barely finished 2018. It does not look like we have as high of usage as what kind of the estimates have been. The estimates were somewhere between the 75 and 85% range. I think we're going to fall closer to a 60 or 65%, at least for 2018. But then, of course, I have to do the first half of 2019 because that affects this fiscal year. So once I have those adjustment numbers, I'm probably looking at towards the end of June before I know a little more. We're also hoping, we're going through any of those items that are encumbered in purchase orders in the financial statements. We're kind of combing through to see how many of those are, reality versus, I think I'm going to spend $1,000 or whatever, but not actually having a bill that's going to come in the mail and go against that purchase order. So we're drilling in on that. Everybody's individual departments is working on that, as well as our business office staff. So hopefully we find a little more money and a little more cushion than $1,000 at the end of the year. Our auditing firm was in the building while I was writing this report. They stayed for almost the full 3 days, but not quite. They left at about 2:30 in the afternoon on Friday. They sat with us, they met with us. Things went well. The very few things that they noted in their testing, I do not believe are anything that is going to come up on a management letter. They're just recommendations or things they noticed as they went through and did their testing. So I think we're good. They'll be
Yay.
back in September to finalize their audit. We did 2 more RFPs this month, so we're trying to really hone in and get the best prices by going out to bid for a lot of different services that maybe we haven't in the past. Also being that you are a consolidated district, we are noticing what costs tend to rise above that $15,000 mark over a year to comply with the Vermont bid law. And so those are some of the things we're pulling out and taking out to bid. Custodial maintenance products and printer cartridges were something that we decided to bid. And we received 2 bids for the printer cartridges. We ended up choosing W.B. Mason. They were the best bid. We received 4 bids for the custodial maintenance products, basically cleaning supplies and such. And Swish was the company that we chose for that bid. We have a policy that is ready for approval by the board later in our action items. This is the policy for cash handling, and it is the one that we all reviewed at the last board meeting. So this is just the round of approval for that.
With a slight change, adding the "or representatives" to
Yep.
cover non-employees.
Yep. Let's see. And I think that's it, unless anybody has any questions.
Yes, Larry?
I couldn't remember, Elizabeth. Do we, I see balance sheets for the general fund, the preschool, and special ed, but we have a ton of other funds, and I think sometimes we get those.
We do them
reports.
quarterly.
We do them
Yep.
quarterly, okay.
So
That's what I was
usually
asking.
it's in the month ending. You don't have a board meeting in July, so you won't see those until August for the,
Right.
the year ending June 30th. But yeah, we're doing those quarterly.
And that'll have the transactions in it, right? It'll have the beginning balance.
It has a beginning, the one I did that I've been using is the beginning balances, the activity of additions and
Right.
subtractions, and then the ending
Right,
balance.
which is
Yeah.
what I was hoping for,
Yeah.
okay.
It's a more summarized version of a balance sheet, but to give more detail in that way.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Elizabeth? All right. Sheila, you have a little addendum?
There were 2 things that I had made a note to tell you that I forgot to include in my report, and I just don't want to skip over them. I'm sorry. One is that Z Brown is moving on. I accepted her letter of resignation today. She's going to be going to the Burlington School District, so we're excited for her. This is a really good opportunity, but we will definitely miss her, and we wish her well. And then the other piece is just to let you know that we were able to reach agreement on the early retirement grievance that we had.
Was it fair labor
Fair labor.
filing?
Yes, yeah. So Mark actually supported the board in that, and we were with the labor board down in Montpelier, and we're able to reach agreement on how we will proceed. So there was no need for that to go any further, which was helpful and good.
Good, thank you. All right, so principals' reports. Any questions for the principals? Do any of the principals have anything to add? No, no questions.
So.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the second time we've heard from a person in the audience about the grading system, and I'm concerned that the board might need more information. I don't really know how to proceed, but it seems that we've heard 2 communications about it, and I don't know where to go from here. Doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction. I'm not sure if it's going in the right direction. I just don't know. So I wanted to throw that out to the principals, because it's middle school, right? And it's just the middle school, right? Jump Start, or
No.
Jump Rope is middle and high school.
But the experiences that are being shared are based on, middle school experiences.
Right, okay. So
I am encouraging people to bring their questions, concerns, issues to the people who can answer them.
Mhm.
right?
And
And then if that, you know, if that's a dead end, or for whatever reason, they still have more concerns, then they can go to the superintendent, right, per the
Right.
policy, right? And then, you know, if something is still concerning at that point, then the process is to have the board review the superintendent's decision. Because I certainly don't know anything about grading. I mean,
No, I
you know.
No, of course, that's not our job.
Right, right.
I think more informational sessions are planned. I think the hesitancy that I'm feeling right now is not about a lack of information on our part. It's just, do we really want to have this conversation right now?
I don't think we do.
Yeah, okay.
I wasn't expecting a conversation
Okay.
now.
Okay.
What I'm suggesting is that the board might want to know some more about
Sure.
what's happening.
Sure.
George has got.
Yeah, go
You
ahead.
know,
Oh, George, sorry.
So there's a link in the, I think, the high school report to the middle, I guess it's the high school and middle school standards-based learning handbook, which I will admit I have not read yet, but there may be some answers there. And I'm wondering if that, is that also on the website? It
Yeah.
is. Okay.
And it was shared at the beginning of the year with parents.
It's also linked on the front page
Oh,
portal
Jump
of Jump Rope. So in order for parents
Right.
to see their students' grade report in Jump Rope, they see these links here.
Right, and, I mean, in that portion of Stephanie's report, she also does talk about how there was a survey that went out to Team Phoenix, which I believe is the 8th grade, to
Yes.
gather more questions. I assume those questions have been,
Yeah, there were 5
Addressed.
responses, and some of them didn't actually have questions other than the grading platform.
Are you
You go.
starting to notice any trends of whether the anxiety level and of people is getting less and less as all this information is out there now? Or are you getting more complaints or less complaints, or?
We actually haven't gotten that many complaints. I mean, we responded to them when we do. People have asked questions about them. You know, there is a difference between middle school and high school grading and
Yeah.
assessment, and what parents are seeing this year at the middle level is not, the platform will look different. Grades will be grades, prefer to use the word scores, will be arranged by class. So there'll be a more logical sequence. Well, not logical, but it's a platform that will look more traditional. So you'll see the proficiencies as they're being assessed in integrated 3, for instance, as opposed to the middle school was done by subject. The middle school made some specific decisions because they wanted to direct parents' attention to the standards themselves, so they elected not, and I agree, they elected not to summarize it into a course score. In your brain, you could think grade, you know. So you're directed, you see English, and then you're directed to the standards below. When you click on them, you can go to the assessment summary and see the scores on those assessments. But it's a transition. You're seeing a range, you're seeing a proficiency score. You're not seeing an 88, for instance. We're very familiar with an 88 or a B because it's the way we were assessed. So it's a shift in what you're thinking. And we're you know, we have plans to have that communication. We're drafting a school-wide handbook now. We've taken the middle school that made some changes. The middle school will be making those same changes that the high school will. And I'm very confident that it will, some of the questions and the concerns that we're hearing won't be the same at the high school level because of some of these changes that we're making. And those things were always going to happen at the high school level anyways. I mean, there is a different level of accountability at the high school level. We do need to report out to post-secondary programs. We recognize that. We always have recognized that. So transcripts will look the same. They'll be accompanied by a profile. And I'm confident that we're going to be able to answer those questions. And I know we're not going to be doing harm to students.
Excuse me? I beg to disagree with you, Stephanie, because you will be
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask that you can talk to her outside of the meeting time, please.
Well, I think it's important for the board to know. Do you not care about what the community feels, or do you, I mean, what is your thought? I have statistics here from the state of Maine. I have things from the Vermont NEA that says this is a disaster. The NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3 in the state of Maine has asked them not to do this because it does impact the kids' sports eligibility. The formula does not work for doing it from proficiency-based to collegiate. And currently, in our position where we are meeting those standards. They're already done in what we have in our grading. We're already meeting those proficiency requirements, so why are we changing?
So again, I'm going to ask you to talk to the administration.
Well, I'm asking you, as the
because the
board.
administration is the ones who have the answer to that question.
But you are our voice, and we're saying this, and you're not doing anything. And that's not the role of the board. You are our voice. You can disagree or not, but that is true.
So we have a lot of communication planned for the fall, and I think if I could just finish what I was going to say, I think one thing that we could do is try to solicit your questions in advance of those trainings, so we make sure to speak directly to those things. But you're sort of lumping together a lot of things. You're lumping together things that have happened in Maine and in the Vermont NEA, for example, and those things aren't universally applicable to our situation or the other things that are happening in Vermont schools.
Okay, so when LePage signs a bill to repeal proficiency-based diploma mandate, that doesn't speak anything to you?
I think, again, there's a lot more detail behind that. You can't universally take what's happened in Maine and then put it over what's happening in Vermont.
Or Don Tinney proficiency-based standards and grading testimony?
So
Have you
again,
seen
when
all
we,
that?
when we.
I'm just asking, has the board seen all of those? Were they
They
given
may or
any
may
of these
not.
things? So it was just one-sided.
So, but we are not, the board is not educators. We employ educators to run the schools.
I understand you're not educators, but you're our voice. So when we are saying we have an issue and the community is saying we have an issue and you just say, oh, I'm not going to deal with it, then don't be on the board. Because that is your job as a board member, to be our voice.
So to represent the entire community, yes.
Yes, but you're not. When people have come forth and said these issues, you're not doing anything.
All right.
And we are in compliance currently, right now.
I'm glad we're in compliance.
Right, so we don't need to change the grading because we're already meeting those proficiency-based standards. So, who's going to answer when my child does not get into the school because it shows that my kid is failing, when they don't get the merit scholarships, when they don't get that, who's going to be accountable? Are you? Is Stephanie Taylor? Is the superintendent? Please tell me, because I would really like to know. When my kid doesn't get that because you guys have missed the mark.
I am going to ask you to talk to the administration directly outside of the meeting. Okay.
I like your canned response, that's perfect. I'm
So
glad that you're our board chair.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad.
I think personal
Okay.
attacks are probably not required.
Excuse
I hear
me.
you're really upset.
Yeah, I am. You know
Okay.
what? I'm so
We're-
upset that I'm actually thinking about having my kids not go to Virginia's. And I've had 3 out of my 5 here, and my husband went to school here.
We're going to move on with the meeting. It's time for the student report. Alder, do you have something you'd like to share?
I sure do. So, just a little fun thing, the musical Hadestown, which Walden got to see.
You did, you guys got to see
Yeah,
it?
we got to see it in March on our New York City trip. Won 8 Tonys last night, including Best Musical. Yeah, so just a little fun thing that Virginia students got to experience.
And Hadestown is actually written by Anais Mitchell.
Yeah, who
was from around here.
yeah, and the show first started at the Virginia's Opera House. That was the first time it's ever performed, so it's a cool little bit of history I wanted to share. I've got a bunch of stuff because I unfortunately missed my last report. So I'm going to try and expedite it as much as I can. Young Writers Conference, we sent 10 students. It was great. Young Writers Conference is always an awesome opportunity. Graduation's coming up for the class of 2019. Encourage everyone to be there. Welcome graduation was this past Thursday. Superintendent and the principal were there, and it was great. Students from Virgins went to the climate rally hosted by the Vermont Youth Lobby, where we got a shout out from a representative for our signs, which were sticks with cardboard attached to them with pitchforks painted on and torches, and she thought that was very funny. And so did we. Girls lacrosse is state champions.
Yeah.
Amazing. The boys baseball team got up to the championship and
Also well done.
unfortunately lost, but that's farther than they've been in a while, so yay.
Right.
The Trills and Thrills Festival, which happens at the middle school level, both groups got superior ratings from their adjudication.
And a lot of fun. I went on that trip. It was a good time.
Prom was wonderful. There was the whole sort of event that was the community reaction to the decision to remove prom king and queen as a label and make it gender neutral. And nobody cared at the actual prom. Everyone had a lot of fun with it. It was a great time. Underclassmen recognition was 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago? Okay.
A couple weeks ago.
I'm very on top of my dates, as you can tell. And underclassmen were recognized for all the great work they do during the year. Senior Awards Night is on Wednesday, where they will have a similar sort of thing going on. A few weeks ago, there was a restorative practices workshop that a lot of students from the school attended. I think around like 30. I don't have the exact numbers. At Basin Harbor, where we started this process of learning how to introduce restorative practices into our school. I'm sure you're wondering what restorative practices are. I'm not the best person to explain that, but in general, it's just a way of trying to make a school experience more positive for the students there and really make it a community instead of just some place you go for 7 hours a day. And then a less fun thing, and this is just purely like anecdotal, but I feel like I wouldn't really be doing what I'm supposed to if I don't mention it. In a conversation I had with a few students, they expressed to me that there are some real issues with the space being unsafe for students of color and students of the LGBTQ community, and it was just a disappointing thing to hear, and I just want to throw that out there and say that, you know, there are students who, you know, face that on a day-to-day situation, and that's not really something that anyone should ever have to go through. And I'd love to maybe see administration or teachers working to sort of get rid of that as much as they can. People are always going to be jerks, but I would love for the school to do more to try to stop that from happening. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. I don't, you know, not sure where that comes from, but if there's any sort of issue around that, that's certainly something that I'm sure is going to be.
Yeah, and Alder may not have seen my report, but a couple of us, there were actually more students invited, but they ended up not being able to go. There was a student-led Schools Against Racism conference held at Randolph, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago now. The weeks are running together. And Carly and I took some students down there. This was organized by their social justice groups at Randolph High School, and very widely attended. It was the first annual conference, and they're looking for more. I think Alder's 100% correct, and it's been a concern of ours. I'm talking with a group, it's either QC or CQ right now. Her name is Kathy Johnson, about doing a workshop and getting a cohort of teachers here that want to participate in it and learn more about bias, privilege, and discrimination, and how we have those conversations and address them in ourselves so that we can have those conversations and hold them in our classes with our students. And I would say that's the theme of the Vermont Principals Association Leadership Academy. So it's a very real need in this state in general. We're going to have start talking about that with our keynote next year, next year. So we're doing what we can. I appreciate Alder saying it in this venue, because I think it's really important that we all address it.
Yeah.
So
Good.
A great feeling of inadequacy. I mean, right now, our only approach has been to deal with it disciplinarily, and because I think we feel we lack the words to have those conversations sometimes.
Right. Well, yeah, that's really good to hear. Thank you. All right. Great. Thank you, Alder. And I guess at our next meeting of the full board, we will have more student representatives. So you'll be able to share the load a little bit. That's right.
And
Okay.
congratulations on being part of the new royal.
The royal court. Yes. Okay, so let's see, that brings us to the board chair report. We didn't have any committee reports, so I kind of just put everything under myself, I guess. I did want to formally write to the Panton Select Board, and I did receive a response from them that just basically said, yes, they are very aware and they are actively searching for a representative or a suitable person who could be a representative on our board. I wanted to include the EQS there, because those are the rules that mandate the proficiency-based graduation requirements, and that is also the place that is includes the legal reason for us to approve the continuous improvement plan each year. So those were questions that came up at the last meeting, so I put those there. And then Lori wrote up a potential resolution for us to forward onto the VSBA, so.
Which I noticed had some.
Okay. Some spelling things, you can just hop on and fix those. So we are going to take a vote on this later, but if anybody wanted to talk about it now, yeah, George, go ahead.
I just asked the question, is it in light of the delay in the requirement to implement the new accounting software, is it, do you still want to submit it, or is it about timeliness in general as well?
I reread it after I read your business manager report, and I felt like it was still pertinent. But y'all, we can talk about it. I felt like it was still worthy of saying, because I think there's other things that the agency is failing on. Have we got our equalized pupils yet?
We have what they call a final number. Hasn't changed since the last board
Right,
meeting.
and we have a database problem, we have a survey issue. I mean, I hear it at this Vermont School Boards Association that the agency is just not working the way they should be working to support our school systems. So I feel like this is the way a way of getting some attention on it.
Lori, what was the part about the dual enrollment vouchers?
So, at the last VSBA meeting, one of the board members said that one of their students had been denied a dual enrollment voucher. This was a school that's on the border with New York, and the students had been getting payment for attending New York State schools.
Oh.
And suddenly the agency stopped okaying it with no explanation.
It's not a state, not a Vermont school.
Well, it's because it's an out-of-Vermont school, but they've been doing it in the past. Anyway, it's like, really? Because it's over the, anyway, it just, so that's what that is about.
Any other questions or comments about that here?
I read it, I thought that it was a good statement.
Okay, so that actually brings us to our action items. Look at that.
I move to approve the minutes as written of May 2019. May 2019.
Second.
Yes, John is not here, but he sent an edit. Let's see. Sorry, I had a lot of things open on here. Where is it? John, May 20 minute, I got it. Ooh, I got it. I would suggest amending the PBGR procedures to say this, quote, John Strout asked and the superintendent confirmed that ANWSD and VUHS in particular have graduation requirements that meet all criteria set forth by Vermont State Board of Education Rules 2120.8 Local Graduation Requirements, which states, each secondary school board is responsible for setting graduation requirements in accordance with these rules. I think it's important that given the chatter out there that we are crystal clear that we are adhering to requirements stipulated by the state for PBGRs. So did he send that to you, Glory?
I can.
Okay.
So I think I need to catch up. This is, he's saying that the minutes don't reflect what was said at the board
What he
meeting?
said,
Okay.
his comment, he wants his comment
Okay.
into the minutes.
So it's his comment he wants to adjust. His comment
it's
that is
his-
reflected in the minutes.
It's his comment that he made at the meeting that he wants to have reflected in the minutes,
Got
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other changes or edits to the minutes? Okay. All in favor of accepting those with that edit, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? All right. Next round of minutes.
I'll move to approve the board minutes as written for May 30, 2019 for the board retreat.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comments or edits to those minutes? George would like his name spelled correctly, please. Anything else? All right, all in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Lori's abstaining. Bills and director's orders.
Go ahead.
I reviewed
Oop,
such.
make a motion, please.
Move to approve bills and directors, then
I have the numbers if
Yeah,
you
the
want me
numbers,
to do
okay.
it. Do you want me to do it? Okay. I'll move to approve the bills and director's orders for accounts payable in the amount of $697,840.68. Payroll in the amount of $1,191,339.25, and the student accounts in the amount of $38,436.25.
Is there a second?
second.
And Mark, you read
And
that?
I went through the various bills just over 10 hours ago. So they were done this morning. We didn't bump into the auditors last week, so we held off till today where there was more room in the office to do things
Mm.
and less confusion and chaos. And I had one question that was answered and all is fine.
Thanks for
All right.
doing that for John.
I was going to say, I thought we heard from you last month.
You did.
Okay.
There was some confusion with the schedule, and then
Yeah.
John realized that, oh, I won't even be in town.
Oh,
So I got it.
well, thank you. Double duty. Okay. Any other questions? All in favor of approving those bills and director's orders, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, policy. Need a motion.
I'll move to adopt the policy number F44,
Yep.
F44 cash handling policy as written.
Okay, seconded by Lori. Any questions on this? We had brought up that one term George had brought up, and they made it more general, more inclusive. So, all right, all in favor of approving that policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Bid for cleaning supplies. Need a motion.
I'll move to approve the bid for cleaning supplies and ink and toner.
One second.
It's two different bids. I just moved them together. Is that a problem for anybody?
No, I heard Elizabeth say that the cleaning supplies was going to Swish and ink and toner to WB Mason. Is there anything else we need to know about that? You were there, right, Mark?
No, so
It's all
George.
good? Looks good? All right. All in favor of approving those two bids, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, the resolution.
I'll move to adopt the resolution for the VSBA as written, except but should be spelled B-U-T, not U-B-T. So I don't know why that didn't show up as spell check.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All right, any questions or conversation? All in favor of adopting this resolution for VSBA, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right. Thank you very much, Larry. We have a resolution to offer up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And we have some hires to approve.
Move to hire Jeremy Brooks as an alternative education science teacher at VUHS, Jamie Wells as a school nurse at VUHS, Sarah Morrell as school counselor at VUES, and Janelle Tatro as a music educator at ASC and FSC.
CS, but yes. Okay.
Oh, FCS, sorry.
Sorry. All right, great. Questions? All right, all in favor of approving those four hires, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Wonderful.
So can I ask a real quick question? You said there was a Google Drive, a folder on the Google Drive for board resources? Is that what you said it was?
Yes, I believe it's called Board Resources.
Okay, maybe you could help me later.
Okay, we have two discussion items. The first is regarding policy 823, community engagement and vision. We have a vision that was developed out of quite a lengthy process of engagement with the community. The policy states that on an annual basis, the board will revisit the vision and make adjustments according to input from community and the superintendent. So it's been at least one annum since we adopted the vision. I was wondering if we would like to try to revisit that. And I'm not suggesting that we need to make changes or that changes would be desired, but, we should at least, I think, gather some input. Could be something simple, like, love the vision, or I think you should make some edits this way, and we can discuss it in maybe August or September. I don't know. Do people have thoughts or ideas about this? We don't have a process in place.
Can I comment?
Sheila has some thoughts. Thank you.
The vision, and when we are crafting the continuous improvement plan, vision is somewhat the North Star of that. And so considering that we're sort of at the tail end of a process, to me, making sweeping changes to this would cause us to really want to revisit some of the other priorities that we've identified in some ways, depending on what those changes look like. So for example, when we think about an accessible learning environment, that's a very big priority when we think about providing professional development to staff. And when you hear us use lingo like tier one, that's the classroom-based practices, whether we're talking about the social emotional supports or instruction. that really helps promote that accessible learning environment, so all kids can be successful in the classroom. That's, you know, the North Star that kind of guides our work around that. So certainly critical thinking, productive citizens, resilience, those are all pieces of what we would call the transferable skills that are very much the priority as we're moving into a proficiency model. So I guess I just wanted to call out the ways in which I think this is very reflective of the kind of learning environment we're trying to create. So I would, for one, advocate we not make changes. And you can't argue with kind, collaborative, and creative. So.
There's nothing in there that's really controversial, I don't think, no. I guess the question is more, well, go ahead.
Well, is it really meant for us just to sort of check in with it, make sure we're
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
on target?
think so.
Yes.
And not necessarily want to change
It is.
anything,
Yeah.
because we spent a whole year developing that with lots of people.
Yeah.
and input,
Right, absolutely. So I guess my question to you all is it, you know, do we just check in, or do we check in with the community to see if this is still, you know, reflective of what the community wants?
Well, we do send out, we're working on surveys, that could just be a future survey question. Is, here's the vision, does it still seem relevant, appropriate? And
I mean, it's
touch base
pretty
there.
new still.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But it's also good to have this in place, so 10 years down the road, where we have an ability to kind of check in and say, you know what, that was great a decade ago, but, as opposed to saying, how do we change this?
Which is what we did a year ago. I was like, yeah, this is,
Yeah.
So the policy says, on an annual basis, the board will revisit the vision and strategic plan and make adjustments according to input from the community and the superintendent. We just got superintendent feedback, getting community feedback from the CEC, and there's nothing necessarily, right? You're not hearing anything necessarily from your community. It is only 1 year old. We're definitely talking about it. And we have a strategic plan now. So I think we should table this till next year. Should I make that motion?
I don't know if we need a motion,
Okay.
but Keith,
Just
go ahead.
discussing.
Yeah.
I have no issue with the statement, but I'd like to see a hyphen in ever-changing.
Oh, Keith, if only you had been on the board, maybe it would have gone that way, but
Is it too late for a hyphen?
it was a topic of conversation.
Am I
Believe
stepping
it.
on
was it?
the landmine here?
No.
yeah, that's funny that you zeroed into ever-changing.
Oh, it was whether ever should be there at all, I guess.
Yes, it
right?
was.
Is it just a changing world, or is it
Yeah.
another changing world?
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
Should be a hyphenated world.
Yeah, I like the
Hyphenated
hyphen myself,
ever-changing.
too.
We could possibly, when we do our community work around the strategic plan, we could, you know, just make that part of that process. Just how do you
Okay.
feel about our
Yeah,
vision
like what Mark
statement?
said, does
Yeah.
this still resonate, yes or no? Okay.
Fair.
Thank you. And August board retreat date.
So we did the doodle poll and picked the 22nd from 8:30 to 2. So hopefully, I know that doesn't work for everyone. There wasn't a date that worked for everyone. That particular selection choice had 7. So, and that included Elizabeth and I. So,
It's the best you can do.
yeah, well,
Well, we need at least 7, I mean,
right. And I feel like somebody hadn't.
We don't count
Six.
as the
Yeah, we
7,
don't.
right?
but
We
some
don't
people
count.
hadn't responded, right?
I feel like, yeah, they had
So,
not.
are you, Lori, are you available on the 22nd? Okay.
I might not be. I don't know yet.
I think you were a
Okay.
no, so if your
Yeah,
schedule
I did
changes,
say
that will
no,
be
but I,
Okay.
pivotal.
yeah.
Okay, so you'll try, maybe? Okay. Yes? Keith, are you, okay. You were yes. I was yes. Yes, yes.
I can look and see.
Okay.
7 board
So I know
members.
Tom cannot be there. I'm not sure about Bill and John. What did they respond?
Hang on, I've got,
Bill Bill said yes.
Christina was a no, Lori, you were a no.
I was a no on the
No.
22nd? Oh, that Lori.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh, you were no?
You were a no.
Well, it can go either way. I mean, for me, it can go either way. But I'm going to
And-
make every effort to be there.
Okay,
And then Tom was the only other.
okay, so John said
No.
yes? All right, and so
John
Tom,
said yes. Keith, I didn't have a vote from you,
you
so
just
that's
said
great.
yes.
Um,
Okay. So,
Mark, oh yeah, there you are. Mark's there.
okay,
Yep.
so it sounds like Tom is the only definite no, and you guys are gonna
Yeah.
hopefully try to
Sorry,
work on
I
it.
can't be more
Okay.
definitive yet. I
It's
should know
tough.
more in a
August
month.
is tough.
Yeah, it is hard. So Tom knows, he's upset. But he'll be okay. He'll be okay. He is, well, it's the beginning of his semester, so.
The other thing, I guess I'll just to communicate and, as part of board training and so forth, we've been talking about, especially in light of the fact this came up a couple of times. I'm working with Pietro, our attorney, to come provide an open meeting law, public comment training for the board. He can't come on the 22nd, but I'm checking in around the 19th because that's a regularly scheduled board meeting, so I'll let you know. But we'll try to get him in for some board education early in the year. I think that would be really helpful. We have new members. I know you've done that in the past. You had, I think, Nicole Mace, but there's been a lot of turnover and there's new folks, and it's a good thing to revisit. And, it can even provide a time for you to ask very specific sort of questions with scenarios and that kind of thing, so. We'll do that.
Do we,
hold on, Lori.
excuse me.
No,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead, Lori.
Go ahead, you're first.
Thank you. Do we have an education schedule for the board? I know we've been having education most of the board meetings.
Yes, it's the work plan. So that board work plan is separated into segments, and one is board education. One of those columns on the
Okay.
board work plan
And
is
what I'm
board
wondering is if
education.
there's would bias training, bias discussion, I just think the board.
For the board?
For the
Yeah.
board, yeah. I mean, I think we should have the same, similar anyway, language to what the principals and the superintendent have. I think it's a really
think
good
it would be
idea.
great too, if you can come to our keynote in the fall. You could be invited to that, and
When will that be?
the Monday of the week of school, whatever that Monday is. 26th. Yeah. So we'll
bless you.
share that schedule with you,
Bless
so you can see that.
So our keynote for the, I can't remember what it's called.
Convocation.
Thank you.
Convocation.
Is,
He's
related
talking
to
about implicit bias and
Yeah.
privilege and so forth. Stephanie's also doing additional work with Kathy Johnson and CQ Consulting, specific to some things that have come up at the high school. The bias training is for everyone. The implicit bias training is for everyone, but still would be very interesting for you, I think. And he's a dynamic keynote speaker, so it will be very
What's the-
engaging. His name is Matt Colin. He's a UVM professor.
The 26th, thank you. That's at 8 in the morning, right, on the 26th?
Something like that. We'll send out a schedule for you when we know it. We don't have it nailed down yet.
Okay.
You had a question?
If I may, when we receive one of these doodles, especially for a retreat, the board chair is essential. When you go into that doodle and you see that the board chair has picked 4 dates, there's no sense in checking off any of the others. Make it simple. Check the 4 that she's on, and if you can't make those, you can't make it. That's when it's gonna be, is on one of those dates.
Well, that was the date that had the most people too. Or there were 2 that had,
There were 2 that had
Yeah.
the most people, but
and
it's,
they both included me. Just putting that out there.
just
All right,
to
I
make
think-
things
I
simple.
think
I
one
think
didn't
that
include
brings
Elizabeth.
us to the end of our meeting.
Mhm.
We will we will recess for July. We will return here in August 19th is our next regular board meeting.
Okay.
So all in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm going to assume there's no opposed on that one.
Can I have a signature from you?
Sure.
Signature date and bring it in. It's for idea be fun, so I can.
Okay.